The views expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of this station.
Welcome to Insights into Northeast Michigan, a WBKB News public affairs program. Insights deals with the issues affecting those in the community, as well as Northeast Michigan and the state. And now, Insights into Northeast Michigan.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Insights into Northeast Michigan. I'm Lindsay DeLucia. This morning we're here with Jim Klarich, and we're here at the site of the Holiday Inn where it's going to be built, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about it here on River Street and 3rd Avenue. So welcome, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And if I could start off a little bit with you telling me how this whole process kind of came about. You were right there at the lines of this issue when it started.
Sure. I started back as Director of Economic Development here in 2011, and one of the things that was identified in our list of, I'll say, needs and or wants was additional hotel rooms. I mean, up until this point, we've got, I think, 325 total hotel rooms serving our area, and that's just not Alpena, but trying to serve a broader area, which includes portions of Montmorency County, Alcona County, and Presque Isle County. And that, to be honest with you, just isn't flat out enough rooms. If you look, across the river from us here, NOAA and Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, they host about 100,000 visitors a year. So you can quickly get the idea that 325 hotel rooms will not serve that type of visitor rate. So about 2012, mid 2012, we really set out on a path to recruit additional nationally branded names that people would recognize around the country and internationally, hotel developers to the Alpena area. And that process went on for probably the better part of a year, conversations with, reaching out to IHG, reaching out to the Holiday Inn corporate folks, the Marriott corporate folks, Fairfield corporate folks, and on, just to let them know that we're here. Tell them that we're interested, tell them about our market, and tell them what those needs are to a certain degree. And it culminated in an introduction to the Amerilodge Group out of Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, who decided to take us up on our offer and construct a new Holiday Inn here.
Mm-hmm. And when did you say this all started off?
I would say mid-2012, and I think we went through approval. I think we got the final approvals. It was roughly last September, mm-hmm. I'm guessing. So the process, although it's been slow, it's moving along, and hopefully next year we'll have a new hospitality
mm-hmm.
hospitality process here
right.
in Alpena, where we can serve a lot more visitors.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about that process from, just beginning, like you were just saying, to the approval and beginning to build.
Sure. The process really involved was reaching out because it was cold calling. We didn't have experience in who the appropriate people were to contact. For instance, at Holiday Inn corporate or Marriott corporate or IHG, their parent company. So that was a lengthy process to find out who do we contact. And then who, to a certain degree, would be interested in the particular territory that we're in the state of Michigan, and that kind of thing. So we went through that, and like I said, we ended up, Holiday Inn had, I think, called, or IHG had called Amerilodge and said, hey, there's an opportunity in Michigan. You are the #1 developer in Michigan. Maybe it's something you should take a look at, and they gave us that introduction, and the rest is history.
So it sounds like you guys had a pretty solid process throughout. I mean, did you face any certain issues along the way?
Not really. We went through. We I think put together 8 or 9 potential sites. This, obviously, the one that we're sitting on here, was probably I'll say the best suited just because of its size. It was very interesting to us because we had always envisioned the property being downtown. We think that additional properties as they move forward should be clustered downtown. they have a tendency, these type of developments, to drive additional capital investment, drive additional commerce in particular areas, and I don't see anything that's better suited than that, than downtown, and being able to serve people that can walk and shop, they can walk and eat. They don't really even need to get in their car when they're located here.
Of course, I mean, we're always looking to further the downtown community with more businesses and draw more people here. So we'll talk a little bit more with some others later on about the development and the construction of the site, but what can you tell me kind of about what you think this will do in the future in terms of maybe more hotels or just further on with more businesses?
Yeah, sure. The similar size developments like that we're seeing here, which is in the neighborhood of about $8.2 million, I think, when it's done. In other areas of the state where Mare Lodge has developed these, they've seen, and they measure economic impact. They've been able to measure to a certain degree about $1.2 million in economic activity in its having an effect or in its surrounding area. So to us, that would be about $1 million to spent, additional money spent in our downtown, which is incredible. I mean, it's incredible. And then with their presence here, to touch a little bit on the clustering and that kind of thing, and additional hotels in downtown, that's something, you know, that we'll work through the process of doing. It's something I think that's manageable. It's something I think that we can support. But we have to look at it from not just a development standpoint. Where it's here, we had an empty lot to work with. Future projects will probably require redevelopment because we're working in a box with not a lot of vacant land. So we're wrapping our heads around that, and we'll move forward, and hopefully in the next couple of years we'll know how that turns out.
Absolutely, and in terms of employment, I mean, it'll provide just that many more jobs for people around the community.
Yeah, and there's a chain to that. There's not only the direct jobs that'll take place here at the hotel, but indirectly, as you inject like $1 million or $1.2 million into our downtown, you'll see new businesses spring up, maybe larger businesses, or maybe the ability to employ more people at some of the stores and the restaurants in downtown because of that business. So we see there's an extension of this direct investment for sure.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the site, or just the process of kind of starting this whole bigger hotel phase here in the downtown area?
No, the only thing I would add is I'd just like to say thanks to the city. The city was a great partner, and thanks to Mare Lodge for having the confidence in us to make this investment in Alpena. Both of those things, it wouldn't happen without either one of them. So it was really thanks to both of them.
Absolutely, and we will be speaking with some others from the city coming up next. So thanks so much, Jim, for joining us.
Thank you.
And coming up next, like I said, we will be speaking with Adam Paul, who will be telling us a little bit about the development of the area. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Insights into Northeast Michigan, everyone. I'm here with Adam Paul from the City Development and Planning Department. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me out.
Of course. So tell me a little bit about your part in this. You're a little bit in between the pitching process and the construction. So tell me about the development of the project.
Certainly. And you just spoke to Jim Klarich, and he talked quite a bit about the recruiting process and showing them the different sites and that kind of thing. And that's kind of the point where I stepped in as well. Jim's job is to go out and find these people. He makes the cold calls and that kind of thing. But once he gets them in town, that's where my office steps in, and we try to assist as much as we can. So once Jim makes those calls, him and I will sit down and determine a list of sites that will fit what the developer is looking for.
Okay.
So we want to make sure we get the right size, that kind of thing. And we'll put a list of sites together. Then he'll show the developer, and we'll usually go on a tour of the site. Sometimes I'll be involved, sometimes not. But where my role really fits in is when a developer selects a site, and then my role is really determine what the challenges for the site are, and to try to overcome any of those challenges. For instance, the site we're sitting on right now, obviously we're along the river right now, so there was some floodplain issues that needed to be looked at. So what we did is we looked at those, and we noted that where they were looking to build the building was slightly in the floodplain, which it makes it very difficult to develop and makes it very expensive. So one of the things that we can do is we pointed them towards a local surveyor, which was capable of getting that floodplain changed through the FEMA process, and we were able to modify that floodplain and get them to a point and move the building closer to the road where it would no longer have an impact on the project. So once we got through that hoop, the other problem is this is a very old site. Traditionally along the river we had industrial properties, and this site alone, I think they stacked coal, wood, any number of things throughout the years, and that caused unstable soil conditions. And basically what that means is they can't build on this property like they would on most properties. So what they have to do is they have to have specialized foundations. The problem is those specialized foundations cost a great deal more than other building on a new greenfield site. So what they do is we have something called the brownfield program, and that's run through us locally and through the MEDC. And what we can do is we can capture the future taxable value of the hotel and use that funding basically to pay for the cost of the additional improvements. So in this particular instance, they had to drive pilings roughly 30 feet down in order to hit bedrock. So that ended up costing a little more than $800,000 just to get those pilings down, and which is significantly more than a traditional foundation would for a hotel of this type. The other thing we had to do, or at least we looked at, was 3rd Avenue along here. At one point it was a one-way street, which makes it very difficult to access the site when you're coming down Chisholm, because you can see it, but you can't figure out how to get to it without going all the way down to 2nd and coming around, and it would have been very confusing to the out-of-towners that we expect to be utilizing this site. So we were able to develop a plan through our engineering department to, at least for the time being, put this section of 3rd Avenue into a two-way traffic pattern. Basically eliminating hopefully the problems of having to go round and round without being able to find the hotel. So we were able to also utilize the cost of those improvements and wrap them into that brownfield TIF as well. So basically what will happen is the future taxes paid by the hotel will basically pay back for those extra improvements that we really needed to make the site a viable, developable area. So obviously we saw the desire of putting it downtown, trying to really capture those guests that are coming in, and really just, as Jim noted, really just keep them in the downtown. Obviously this is really desirable because it's walkable, that kind of thing. So that was something we were really looking at. Problem was those incentives weren't quite enough to make the tipping point. When the hotel developers come in, they look at vacancy rates, they look at population, they look at a number of different factors, and basically they noted to us that they needed a little more assistance. So one of the things that we were able to do is utilize another incentive package that the city has accessible to them, which is basically a local tax abatement over a number of years. So we're able to abate some of the taxes over a period of 10 years. And what that does is basically it gives them more cash capital in order to invest it into the project itself and really make it nicer. And as far as the project goes, those are the kind of the obstacles for the development. But more importantly, when we're looking at development like this, we want to make sure it really fits in. Obviously, our downtown's fairly historic. We have a lot of great old buildings. And this is the first new building, to my knowledge, that we've had in 20 to 25 years. So what that means is it's not going to, a lot of the initial proposal they had didn't utilize brick. It used a lot of manufactured materials, things like that. And fortunately, the developer was very good, and basically they have to meet the requirements of our planning, of our zoning ordinance, pardon me. And that stipulates that they're used, traditional historic materials such as brick. It kind of dictates the colors, the patterns, that kind of thing. So the developer was able to sit down with us and really listen to what we had to say about what we needed to see through our zoning ordinance, and just really get it more aesthetically pleasing and really fitting in with the downtown. And they were really great about incorporating those historic features into the design of the hotel. And in addition to that, trying to really utilize the riverfront, unlike really open that up to not only the visitors of the hotel, but also accessing the hotel from people that are just walking by.
Right, and so you touched a little bit on it in terms of, putting an image into the local community's mind of what this will look like. Is there anything that you can describe to us about what we may be seeing?
Well, what you're going to see is, it's going to be one of the largest buildings within the city of Alpena. We're looking at, 4 stories. We're looking at, 90 rooms. But more importantly, it's going to have those traditional brick characteristics. It's going to have, there's going to be some color variation, that kind of thing, but it's going to be subtle tones that have been in our downtown already. One of the first things the architect did when he came to town is to start snapping pictures of the existing historic buildings, and he said, "I want to match these colors." And so they've been really great to work with in that regard. And so I think you're going to see a building that it's going to be large, it's going to be imposing, it's going to change our skyline, if you will. But at the same point, it's going to really fit in, and it's not going to well, it's going to stick out, but it's for the right reasons and hopefully not the wrong ones.
Right, and you know, just stick out just enough so that people notice it and come by and give it that attention that it deserves.
Absolutely, it's going to be something that people are going to notice, but at the same point, it's going to be something people can find when they're here.
Right.
So.
All right, well, we're really looking forward to it. Thanks so much for all the information. We appreciate
problem.
it.
Thank you.
And coming up next, we'll be speaking with Don Gilma more about the construction of the site that you see behind me. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Insights into Northeast Michigan, everyone. I'm here with Don Gilma, the city building official. Don, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, glad to be here.
And so if you could just start off a little bit by telling me your part in this whole project down here that everyone is seeing with the construction.
Well, and that's exactly what the building department's end of it is. Initially, as the Mayor Elijah approached the city and ironed out details of their agreements and things of that nature, you know, we add construction experience to them. You know, what kind of codes are we on, area contractors, things of that nature that they may want to use later on. Before plans are officially submitted for the plan review, you know, we help them tweak little issues that might be in there, you know, as far as how things have to be built by the building code. And we were, at the time this was being done, we were just about to transition from the 2009 Michigan Building Code over to the 2012. And every time they change, there's always just this, like, some new ground and some rules been tweaked. So we help them through that. Once everything's worked out with the city and they're ready to proceed with construction, they typically submit the plans for construction review to my department, to the building department. The plumbing and the mechanical plans would get submitted to the state of Michigan, as they have authority of plumbing inspections and mechanical inspections in the city. Electrical, we also take care of that with one of our subcontractors. And so we get the plans, and then we just go through them and make sure that things like the swimming pool, you know, for an example, that everybody can relate to, that the suction devices are compliant, so you don't read about some kid getting held against the drain in the bottom when it's pulling water in and it pulls their hair in and they drown. So there's a lot of little things like that that we look at. Other things are the footings. Obviously, this ground along the river in Alpena had a lot of fill brought in. There's a lot of questionable soils. So they started out with the soils investigation, hired a firm to come down and drill some holes. How far do we have to go down to hit something solid that's going to hold up a 4-story hotel? And so once that's determined, they decide what type of a footing are they going to require to hold up the structure and how often are they going to have to be placed. And so as I'm sure people remember, this was the skeleton of iron throughout much of the winter. And those were the helical piles that were driven down 25 to 35 feet to hit the solid substrate underneath to be able to hold it up. After that, we start with this concrete forms that are all sitting right on top of those. And those are all strategically placed to hold up everything that's going up for the next 4 stories. And so basically that's what we do. We just come down as they call for inspections to make sure that they're putting the right amount of reinforcing steel in the right place. Special inspectors were hired, third party, by the hotel owner, not by the contractor, but the hotel owner. And they verify that the admixtures and the strength of the concrete that's being used in the footings meets what the engineers all specified. So every time they were pouring something, they would come over, and R.S. Scott was tasked with doing that. And they would come over and they would take cylinder tests, and then after the concrete has to be so strong within 28 days, it's broken and it's measured, and did it make it or did it not? And I'm happy to say that everything here has by far exceeded what was required.
So can you tell me a little bit, I know that there had been a delay in construction, you were talking a little bit about it with the iron. What was going on with that? Just kind of explain to viewers.
And that was the first delay. The plans that were submitted to us actually had what was called auger cast concrete pilings, in which they would have drilled 18-inch hole down, 25, 35 feet, put a bunch of steel in there, and then filled it up with concrete. And probably for cost, there must have been a savings or a time lapse of availability of people that could do that. They switched gears and they decided to go with the driven steel pilings, which is fine. You know, they both meet code. And so that was a little bit of a delay while they redid their plans and got things back to us so we'd be able to watch those being inspected. Do the inspections while those were being installed. Also required another special inspector for the steel. And then the other thing that always slows us down a little bit here, of course, is winter. So when the ground was frozen, the concrete contractor came up a few times through the winter, digging, hoping the frost was gone. finally told them, give us a call. We'll let you know when it's gone, because they come from Indiana.
Yeah, they don't know.
Then they got here, and there's like anything else, you know, was a few coordination issues. The people that drove the steel in, they specialize in building overpasses and bridges and things of that nature. They had to be contacted to come back and cut the steel off so that their caps could be welded back on top, and then they had to find somebody to weld the caps on top. And so, you know, not to fault the general contractor, but those are kind of things, little things that get overlooked until all of a sudden here we are ready to go, and well, let's stop for a second. And fortunately they were able to find local talent up here that could weld the plates on for them, you know, once they were cut to the appropriate length.
Right, and you touched a little bit on it with winter.
Right.
It's not very close, but you know, it's coming up. So what are kind of construction plans in terms of that?
I couldn't tell you. That's beyond my knowledge right now. You know, if they do decide to keep building through, and of course it's up to them. But, you know, my opinion is if they decide to keep building through the winter time and they don't have the outside of the structure up, or they get the outside up and then they're going to spend all winter on the inside, that really increases the cost because you have to heat that thing. So where they're going to be at exactly is anybody's guess at this time. Because obviously they're not going to have this hotel up before the snow starts to fly.
Right. And so looking at it now, you know, we see some foundation and we see people out there working. So what are the next steps?
Well, basically what's going on, what you're seeing right now is all the foundations are in. And so the next thing is, then the next thing is going to happen is the first floor is a concrete floor that'll get poured right over the tops of all those concrete slabs that you're seeing out there, those foundations and footings. Prior to that, all the things that are underneath of that slab are being put in. So what we have out there today is some plumbers from the 45th Parallel Plumbing Company, Gary and his guys, and they're digging up and running all the underground plumbing because there's going to be a whole bunch of bathrooms at 80 hotel rooms and the stuff for the pool. So they'll dig all that out, get all their pipes laid, their water pipes, their sanitary sewer pipes. There'll be some storm site drainage off the roof, things like that, all going through the building and underneath that slab. So they'll have to dig it all up, get it all glued together, and then the state plumbing inspector will have to come and verify that all that is in good shape and meets the codes. Then, you know, once that's all done, there'll be underground electrical will be in there too, and some other stuff, gas lines and things of that nature. Once all that's inspected, then the concrete guys can come back and actually put the floor on.
Okay.
And so I would assume that when you see the floor go on, that's when things will, the cement floor, the slab, that's when things will really start to happen. Then it's start going above ground.
Right, and so you said how many rooms are going to be constructed in this hotel?
I think it was 80.
About 80, and 4 stories?
4 stories, correct.
So looking at it from a construction standpoint, you know, when would you say you think this would be complete, this project?
Next year.
All right. Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to it, absolutely. And we appreciate everything of, you know, all the construction information that we hadn't known before that you're sharing with us today. So thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, anytime.
And thanks so much for watching Insights into Northeast Michigan. Tune in next week.
Insights into Northeast Michigan is produced by WBKB News. If you have any comments, suggestions, or topics you would like to see on a future show, please email WBKB News. This has been a production of Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation. All rights reserved.